life is no thrill. It's worse than nil. So draw the right conclusion. Let them be still.
Welcome to episode number 84 of the Exploring Antinatalism Podcast, a podcast showcasing the wide range of perspectives and ideas throughout antinatalism as it exists today, through interviews with antinatalists and non-antinatalist thinkers and creators of all kinds. Now running 5 years strong. I'm your host, Amanda Sukenick, and today I'm speaking with reader, writer, Booktuber, accountant, Renaissance man, and author of the novel The Unbearable Heaviness of Being, or Life Reviled, Carroll Wainwright. Carroll, welcome to the Exploring Antinatalism Podcast. It's an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. Yes, Carroll, you have a wonderful YouTube channel called The Falcon Reads, in which you review an incredible array of books from a number of different genres. Your reviews of various antinatalist works like Thomas Ligotti's The Conspiracy Against the Human Race and Jim Crawford's Confessions of an Antinatalist have been excellent. But I want to confess, it wasn't until you were recently did a wonderful and fantastic interview with Lawrence Anton on the Lawrence Anton channel that I realized that you were not only a reviewer of antinatalist books, but an author of an antinatalist book yourself. An incredible and unput-downable novel, The Unbearable Heaviness of Being, or Life Reviled, which I have now thoroughly enjoyed. And so I thought it'd be great to have you on Exploring Antinatalism so we could talk all about it. Before we get to that, though, I would first love to learn a little bit more about the man behind the book. So let me begin by asking, who is Carroll Wainwright?
Well, that's just a pen name that I came up with because you probably don't want to publish that book with your real name, probably. So yeah, that's just kind of my Slim Shady alter ego thing that I use. But yeah, so I grew up small town, that kind of thing, southern U.S. I graduated high school, went to college. I have a degree in accounting. So again, no real credentials here in terms of academia, I suppose, just pure layman. And yeah, so I'm kind of a bookkeeper, but with literature as just my passion, I guess. To quote Chekhov, or paraphrase Chekhov, accounting is my wife, literature is my mistress, so to speak. And yeah, so yeah, that's me, kind of like, again, a Renaissance man, I guess. Fingers in a lot of pies, I suppose.
Excellent. A bookkeeper in a variety of senses, let's say.
Yes.
Yes. Carroll, why are you or are you not an antinatalist?
I definitely 100% am. I don't really know that there was like any one grand watershed moment, but rather just kind of a progression of events. You grow up and you learn, you get disillusioned with a lot, and eventually you come to see that both the design of the world you inhabit as well as your own personal design is often not only just beyond your control, but it also is in many ways detrimental to you and your potential for happiness. And no one's here by choice. No one can make that choice, and that's the most damning indictment, I would say, is the fact that you're thrown into something that is or can be very, very horrifying. And there's only one way out, and that's a very frightening prospect. So over time, I just kind of came to the conclusion that it would be better, as the book, David Benatar's book, it would be better to never have been, especially now, with global geopolitics just careening off into, close and closer and closer to seemingly, a kind of an apocalyptic scenario. it's, you just look at things and you're like, I didn't sign up for this. I don't really want to endure. I resent what I have to endure and what I'm made to bear in life, I suppose. So that's the rationale behind my position.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And I mean, would you say that you're, even though you maybe can't pinpoint a watershed moment, do you think that it started to sort of coalesce for you through literature, or were you also, I mean, are you an avid watcher as well of like anti-natalist video channels of various types? Is it through a multitude of media that you've come to this conclusion, you'd say?
I do watch on occasion some several videos I've seen over the years. I've watched quite a bit of content on it as well. I've also read a lot of Reddit pages about it. But yeah, literature is definitely a factor in that, because one of the most interesting things is that the oldest form of art, or at least the oldest form of storytelling, or the most powerful form of storytelling, is tragedy. That's We can go all the way back to, like the Iliad, back to Gilgamesh. Even there's tragic elements, and so I think if you really analyze that, what does that really say about our world? That the most powerful art that we can create reflects sadness and tragedy. So that would seem to speak ill of our reality when we kind of console ourselves and find fulfillment in works of darkness rather than light, I suppose.
Extremely well said, and I think the antinatalist conclusion is sort of the apex of that. And it interesting. I've always sort of compared antinatalism to kind of like Sock and Buskin, the two masks of tragedy and
Yeah.
and comedy. It has those elements in it so clearly for me, because it is this tragedy, life and procreation, but it so often can be expressed through comedy, all these other, sort of just in a multitude of forms. So yeah, I think that was really beautifully said. Your YouTube channel, as I mentioned before, is the Falcon Reads. You have a staggering 313 videos on the channel currently, reviewing all kinds of books, and you've been steadily building your audience since 2021. You've now gone beyond 1,000 subscribers, so congratulations. Yeah, I would love to hear just a little bit about the history of the channel, how it came to be, and yes, anything you'd like to say about the reviews that you put on there that you might wish to say.
I've always read since I was a kid, and then I actually had to start this YouTube channel in college, back a while ago, for a project, and then I was like, eventually I just kind of came to the point. I was like, hey, you might as well do something with it. I've watched a lot of Booktube channels and reviews and such, and I was like, I can do that too. So I, put it to use, and yeah, 300 odd videos get to 1,000 subscribers. It's been kind of a hard road to hoe, but we made it.
You made it, and I think that I went back and watched some of the earliest, and it really is this, it's a steady progression. Your content is just matured, over those 300 videos in a really really definitive way, I think, to where it is now, and that's really been, I haven't watched all of them, but it's been really interesting to watch that development, and it's fascinating that it started as a class project. I love that that's the origin story of the Falcon Reads. May I ask where the title of the channel comes from?
That was from back, actually all the way back when I was in high school. We had like online classes, and we would have to like put a name down, and we would just make up, just the dumbest crap to just put if the name. Like I would put mine was spelled numerically, like with an A, I mean with a 4 for the A and a 0 and stuff. But yeah, so I just rolled with that. That's kind of been my moniker, I guess, for years now, as well as the picture, the rather striking image, and that took on a whole new meaning as my kind of beliefs regarding life evolved. That really is kind of like my symbol now of how wrong it can go.
It's a child afflicted with syphilis, right? Or
Yes.
leprosy? Yeah, I've
Yes,
seen it
syphilis. Yeah.
previously to your channel. I'd seen it, and yeah, it's an incredible. It's an incredible image, period. But as a kind of symbol of antinatalism, you you can't
You
look
can't get better than
you
that.
can't get better than that, really.
Like,
I think that
he didn't ask for that,
no.
whoever he was. You know, I've never been able to find an identity for that picture, but I've just used that for years on here because it does draw attention, definitely.
It absolutely does. I don't know what the origin of it is either. I think it's from a medical journal or something.
Yeah.
And I'm only saying that because I think that when I was, in high school in biology class or something, that was in like a textbook. So
Yeah.
it was familiar to me from that.
Huh.
But yeah, it's an incredible image. Lawrence voiced this in his interview with you, but I want to second it. I'm so happy that there's someone out there who is consistently doing reviews of antinatalist books, because I'm just kind of shocked, honestly, that that's not more of a thing. Like, you kind of think that that would be a very common thing, as antinatalism has grown on YouTube over the last 14, 15 years. You just think that there'd be, a multitude of reviews. And I think you kind of cornered that, which is great. I think that, it's great that someone's done that. It kind of boggles my mind, again, that someone hasn't. So I hope that you continue that practice. Besides your book, the two that you've done so far are Confessions of an Antinatalist by Jim Crawford, who I don't know if you know this, but used to be a YouTuber back in the day. It was actually one of the original antinatalist
Oh,
YouTubers.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
his original YouTube channel was called Metamorph. It's still up, but most of the videos are gone now. But that was a really kind of seminal piece. I mean, for its time, because it was written so soon after the publication of Better Never to Have Been. It's 2007. It's like
Yeah.
really, really early on. And then you also did Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti. Two excellent reviews. The links to both of those reviews will be below in the description. I highly recommend people go watch them. But I just wanted to, ask if there was anything I don't know, any fresh ideas you had on either of those works that you wanted to maybe reiterate or say about them.
No, I would say the Conspiracy Against the Human Race that's the real knockout book, I think, because, well, not only is it's also partly like literary criticism, so that fit me hand in glove more than just the content. But yeah, it's a really great book. It's very thorough, but it's incredibly well written as well. I don't read as much nonfiction as I do fiction, but that really is a fantastically written work. And Jim Crawford's book is that's the real like good entry point, I would say, for people wanting to get into it. Very colloquial, down to earth, but it's also written with real bite and wit to it. So yeah, both great books.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You don't have to answer this if you don't wish to. I can easily cut this out, and if you wish me to. But is Carroll Wainwright like sort of a bit of a character that you've created? I mean, you talked a little bit about this already, or you alluded to it, but I sort of get that sense because Carroll always sort of has a uniform. It's got this sort of signature shirt that you always wear. And so I don't. There is sort of a bit of a character that I think you've built around Carroll Wainwright. I was just curious about that, if you wanted to talk about that at all.
Yeah, to an extent, it's the shirt thing. This is obviously I own more than just this shirt, but this is like my favorite shirt. I like the color, I like how it fits, so this is just what I wear to do this. But yeah, to an extent, I guess it's kind of a character. That's the moniker under which the only moniker under which I would have written this book, because if people, I wouldn't use my real name to write this book, because you're going to draw some stares, just putting out that level of like wow negativity there. It's going to draw some stares. So yeah, Carroll Wainwright's kind of just he is the Slim Shady, I guess, that kind of I can air all my more outre opinions with, I suppose.
I can definitely understand that you did really go for it in the novel, so I can understand the need to create sort of a persona in order to be able to do that with, for sure. So thank you. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I really love about your channel is that you really do seem to have a love of controversial literature. And if I may, that does come out in your writing as well. If I hope you don't mind me saying, you reviewed a lot of really controversial books, some really, I mean, deplorable stuff like the Turner Diaries, which for those that don't know is just unspeakable on a lot of levels. But I'm glad that you do it, because in my mind, at least, people need to know this stuff exists. People should engage with works that discuss them. It's an important part of understanding humanity better, I think. And I wonder if you have, as somebody that's engaged with works like that, I wonder if you have any thoughts on the perception of antinatalism as an incendiary subject, and an incendiary subject within literature. We don't yet, as far as I know, live in a world where any antinatalist work has been banned anywhere that I know of. But I mean, I suspect, at least as things progress and the idea becomes more well known, that might be a possibility. And I have to imagine, like, something like Thomas Ligotti's A Conspiracy Against the Human Race, in the minds of a lot of people, is probably just as much a slur, probably just as much a stain on humanity and literature as something like the Turner Diaries is. And I mean, that's unfortunate in a large sense, that they would be comparable in some people's minds, but I think it would be. So I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that, and just sort of what you think the future of antinatalist literature might be, and how you think antinatalist literature stacks in relation to other incendiary works in people's minds. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely an incendiary subject. I mean, it's the antithesis of what you're biologically engineered to feel. And yeah, I think there possibly has been an example of antinatalist literature being banned. If you know, like Emil Sharon, the Romanian, a lot of his stuff is very, very pessimistic, but it kind of veers into anti-natalist thought. And I know his work was outlawed in his home country under the reign of, what is it, Carterescu, whatever that dictator's name was back then. His stuff was outlawed then. And if you notice that, I'm probably butchering that name, Carterescu, whatever that guy's name was very, very obsessed with birth rates in Romania. Very, very fixated on reproduction. And so that might be an example already, but I could definitely see it being banned in the future, in countries that rely on rely more so, I suppose, on reproduction for their future. I'm thinking mainly of like China and India too. It's one of those things where, like in America or Canada, if you look at like the population demographics, you have like a lot. It's like the upside down triangle, where you have a lot of elderly population and then fewer and fewer younger, because we've reached a point where we can support that. But if you look at countries like India, especially, it's the regular triangle, where you have not so many elderly, but you have lots and lots of children, because they rely on those to care for them later on in life. It's like their retirement policy, kind of. And to me, that's kind of just an indictment in itself, that you'll have kids just to care for you when you get old. It's just this perpetuation of a problem. But yeah, so I could see it really becoming kind of frictional, perhaps, as time wears on and as things wear out. I could see it becoming something that might be banned in future.
I 100% agree with you. And it's interesting you bring up India, because there's quite a bit of antinatalist activism happening in India, and there has been for a while now. So you kind of wonder what as that grows, it could very well be a possibility that could, a bannings of that kind could be an effect of that, unfortunately. So I guess we'll have to see. It's a really good point that you bring up about Sharon. I hadn't thought about that at all. I mean, I knew that some of his works had been banned in his home country. I never considered that maybe that was because of some of the flavor of antinatalism that might be with. I always just had kind of assumed it might be because of his unfortunate political association in his younger days. He was in the Nazi party when he was a young man. I don't know. I'll have to do some research on that, but that was a brilliant comeback. So thank you, Carroll. Out of curiosity, are there any other really controversial books outside of the antinatalist realm that you are, itching to review on the Falcon Reads?
Controversial, but well, actually, on that note, I just prior to getting on here, I had wrapped up a review, which is pretty. I don't know if it's controversial, but it'll be pretty spicy, I say. So stay tuned in a couple of weeks. It should be coming out. But controversial books. No, I think probably the Turner Diaries was like the peak of that. That was the most extreme book that I could like reasonably get my hands on. It cost me $40 too to get that. So, but it was worth it. It's one of the more popular videos. So, yeah, if I do that just for the views. Any attention is good attention, so to speak. So, if I come across anything like that, again, I'll be happy to review it. But I don't think I have anything too terribly controversial in the lineup as we speak.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I would, if I may make a suggestion, if you are ever in the market for another incredibly controversial book, I'd love to see you review Might is Right by Ragnar Redbeard. Another just absolutely horrific book, but I think maybe would have a place on the Falcon Reads channel.
I have heard I've read like excerpts of that book. Yeah, it's just horrendous.
It's
but
disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting.
It's just the most animalistic crap ever. But I would kind of that could be definitely could be on the string in the future.
All right, nice. All right, well, thank you so much. So onward we go. I'd love to now discuss your novel, The Unbearable Heaviness of Being, a book which I have to say I did truly and tremendously enjoy. It's tragic, it's cautionary, it's biting, it's raunchy, it's filthy, it's disturbing. What is not to love? And most importantly, I think it really does make, in a multitude of ways, an extremely strong argument for the cessation of life. It's a very powerful expression of pro-extinctionism, which I think is really it is rarer than people realize, actually, even within antinatalist works. This one really does go just about all the way. So congratulations to you on that. It did warm my black little heart to really a quite tremendous extent. The Unbearable Heaviness of Being is it's extremely powerful. So congratulations to you on that once again. Really quick though, this actually isn't from what I understand your first book. There was one before this one. And I apologize, I don't actually know the name of it, but would you mind telling me a little bit about that one?
Oh, that was my first outing when it came to writing. That's a book called Apocrypha. That one's not anywhere close to being like in content to this one. It's just like I would call that like highly metafictional science fiction / post-apocalyptic fiction that I'm still proud of, but this one is the one that's like, this one's actually moved. Like I only sold like a few copies of the first one, but this thing's actually like, I guess my audience was bigger than I thought it was, because it's actually actually done pretty well so far.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's great. That's excellent. That's excellent news. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, just for our audience that has not yet read the book, to give just a bit of a rundown of what this book is about. Who are the characters? I'd like to talk about a lot of them individually, but without giving too much away. What happens in the course of this story.
Certainly. Well, to preface, coming off what you said about it being raunchy, I will say for any prospective readers out there, whatever trigger warnings you may have, this book will trigger them. Like this is no holds barred, very, very raw, in very, very pornographic. But I think that's the power comes from that kind of. But so yeah, just be warned, anyone out there who wants to read it, it's pretty rough. But to summarize the plot, it takes place in a highly anachronistic retro medieval kind of setting. which shares for its setting the Edgar Allan Poe short story, The Mask of the Red Death, which I can do. It's public domain, so no copyright infringement there. But in my version of events, the humanity really stands on the brink of extinction. A lot of people have died. There's not many people left, but there's one guy who has been discovered who is immune to the disease, which has almost wiped out humanity. And because of that, and because that immunity is a dominant trait, they have to basically use him like a stud horse in order to impregnate the daughters of the noblemen in order to perpetuate their lineages. And so the book is about one such young woman who is like, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be degraded like that, and who resists what they're trying to foist upon her, and is aided in her flight from this by a valet who is rather physically, sadly, not very robust, but who has a heart of gold and kind of the heart of a lion. And then the book is just there. It's basically just kind of a series of Socratic dialogues about life and other stuff. And I would say that like the main thrust of the book is anti-natalism, but that was what I sat down to write about, was anti-natalism. But as it went on, it kind of ballooned to encompass other things, including some rather including theological elements, as well as some speculations about possibly like the point of life and why that's kind of horrifying if life does indeed have a point. And it shares, I could also liken this majorly to like The Handmaid's Tale, if anybody out there has read that or seen the show. It's very reminiscent of that, except dialed to 11. So yeah, that's the unbearable heaviness of being.
Beautiful, thank you. And just so I understand correctly, all the males are in this world, they're still able to sire children. It's just that those children, it's not a children of men situation, in other words, where all the people are infertile. It's just that these children that will be born don't have the immunity to Red Death, right? And so they'll immediately die, and it's only the coxman that can produce survivable children, right?
Yeah, that's the point. I do want to say though, that word, that name, I did not make that word up. Have you heard that word? Okay, so that was what I realized only after, and I was like, oh shit, that was not that word. That name is it's a slang term. It's like a pun for, it means like a rather sexually accomplished male, like a Don Juan or a Lothario. So I thought that word, I guess maybe it's like an English term more, but I'd heard it and I was like, oh, well, people will get, like, it's just, like a placeholder name that's kind of, it's meant to be like a pun. But then I had talked about the book with someone else and they were like, what did you just, they're like, well, this name. And I was like, I did not make that up. It's like it's a real word. So it's just a pun kind of for the name.
I had heard that one before. The one that I wasn't sure if you had, and now I'm actually forgetting what you call, is it the cocksmith or the coxman, or no, the one that is in control of him. Sorry,
Oh yeah, that one I made up. That one's made up, I think, because in like horse breeding, I think that's like the guy who's controls like who's oversees the stud horse, which
the
is
operation, right?
Yeah.
I thought, and this is really silly, but I thought maybe it was a reference to Strong Bad. I don't know if you know what that is. It was a like an internet cartoon that was around like in the early 2000s, and there's a character called the Poop Smith. And I was like, maybe it's the Cocksmith, right? That's the name of the character. So anyway, this is silly, but yeah, no, that it added a little bit of, I mean, horrifying though it is, that what those two characters represent, it did add a little bit of comedy to the piece in its own way. And I mean, little bit of levity goes a long way. Dark levity.
Yeah,
Let's
definitely
put it
dark.
that way. You talk a little bit about this in other interviews, but I was wondering if you wouldn't mind describing for us just like the process of writing this thing, because you mentioned that it was really, it took you a year and a half, and it was a bit of you liken it to pulling teeth, in one video, I think, on your channel. So it's a bit of a strenuous process. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the earliest genesis of this was years and years ago. I mean, ever the aspiring writer, years and years ago, I had the idea for like a short story, which was going to be written as like a series of like progress reports, which would take place in like a bunker after some kind of nuclear war. Kind of like the after the end of Doctor Strangelove, if you've ever seen that, where they're like, we need to get all the women down into the thing, you know. So it was going to be like that, where like there's really nobody left on the earth, and like they have to repopulate. But then it was going to be like one woman who was just going to be like, "Nah, I'm not doing it," and it was going to be again written like in an epistolary kind of progress report thing. But then I kind of shelved that, and later on, as I came to, that was even before I really like went full steam ahead into like anti-natalist beliefs. That was just like an idea for a story that I had. But so then after I really was like, okay, we need to air some grievances here with life, I was like, what can I do to, dramatize this? And I was reminded of that story, but I was like, it would be more grotesque and more impactful, I think, if it was like in some kind of retro setting. And then so I thought of the Edgar Allan Poe story, and because I needed like some kind of apocalyptic setting where like one woman, rejecting motherhood actually has like serious ramifications for humanity overall. So I needed it in some kind of dire setting. So then I thought of the Edgar Allan Poe story, and I was like, that could work. And so then it just kind of went from there. Yeah, I started it in January of 22, and it was, as far as like the plotting went, it wasn't that bad because I knew where I was going kind of from the start. But when it comes to like the central arguments of it, the kind of dialogues that they have, that took a long time because when you're writing something like that, I think it's not just that you're making points, but that you kind of are trying to anticipate counterpoints. So the arguments got longer and longer and stuff with characters going back and forth. So that really took a long time. But yeah, so that's kind of the overall writing process of it.
Yeah, I think that the choice to set it in this long ago world, this Mask of the Red Death kind of setting, it's really in a lot of ways kind of very it's an inspired notion for an extinctionist piece, because I think that other works that have dealt with other antinatalist novels and stuff that have dealt with the extinction of humanity or sentience have really kind of done more with like advanced technology, the red button scenario kind of thing, and that's not in this at all. And I loved that. It was very refreshing, because you kind of think like there's sort of a conversation in antinatalist circles that it's sort of like, well, it's very good that humanity didn't go extinct in some ways before the invention of advanced technology, because if you're a sentient extinctionist, then there would be like no hope for the animals, blah 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 blah. But you've actually kind of created a scenario in which it could be possible, or because if I mean, without a plague, it really wouldn't have. You'd have to rely on the spreading of ideas in order for like everybody to come to an agreement about let's just not procreate and go extinct. But in this world that you've created, everything is sort of already at the brink, and it really just does take one person making some I'm trying not to give too much away, by the way, but it's like one person making some very key decisions, and kind of the right little doll, let's say, falling into the right hands, and creating a pathway to ending the whole thing. And I just think that's like an incredibly unique element of the book. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but I love that piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely kind of going, yeah, like you say, most works that deal with the potential extinction of humanity are like Mad Max or something in the future,
Yeah.
but then this is like going back the other way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also like it's maybe the definitive post-COVID work.
That too. Yeah. It's definitely got that flavor of now, even though it takes
Yeah.
place in the past. So women in this world are really in this horrible situation. They're living in, as you said, a very Handmaid's Tale sort of reality. They exist to breed, basically born simply to be raped, and so that others may be born. And our heroine is poor Lisvita. Am I saying her name correctly?
Well, actually, I don't know because I thought it was
Okay.
I thought it was Elizaveta, but then whenever I was editing this, I would use Word to read the thing back to me, and it was pronounced in like way different than I had. So I was like, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. It's a great name, regardless. So she's trapped in this role. She's sort of a bit of an affluent person, the daughter of a lord, but somehow seems to have seen through the bars of her sentient prison, so to speak. She's sort of a natural born anti-natalist, and despite it all, has come to this incredible conclusion and has this remarkable anti-natalist extinctionist vision that she dares attempt to live her truth in this new role. Would you mind talking a little bit about her as a character, and just how you conceived of her a bit? Interesting choice.
Yeah, she is like I call her in the because the book, not to spoil anything, but it kind of there's an epilogue and then there's something that comes after the epilogue, that kind of comments on it, makes it metafictional as well. And yeah, she is just basically kind of my like idealized protagonist of kind of embodies all my own personal outlooks and stuff. But I knew this story had to be female centric for it to be effective. So hence the like patriarchal, the cartoonishly patriarchal society that they live in, just to kind of amplify the effect of this. But yeah, she's a fighter. She never backs down. She embodies kind of what she embodies my best because I think she's stronger than I probably am in real life. But like she embodies again, she's idealized. She embodies what I think what I would kind of aspire to be, I guess.
Yeah, I have to say, she's more than I ever am too, but I have to say that I do really identify with her to a great deal. I mean, obviously I've never been in anything like her situation, but I do identify with her audacity. It's she represents somebody that is consumed with a truth that cannot be suppressed, too much to her detriment, and she can't shut up about it. And I love that about her. I mean, even there are moments, especially when she's talking to the flagellant, the character that whips themselves, for the horrors of the world, which was brilliantly written, by the way. That whole chapter I think is in iambic pentameter, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, we'll have to talk a little bit about that in a bit, but I really did kind of catch myself going, even though the dialogue was fantastic. I'm kind of like, you're making things worse. Like, shut up, like not now. But I again, as somebody that's done this for 14 years, I do identify with that level of her audacity. Again, it's a truth that can't be silenced. But it's more than that. That you hit on it a little bit just a bit ago. It's the significance of a female antinatalist hero, though penned by a man, I think is more important than maybe even you realize. I mean, as you may know, there's been little to no statistical study of the antinatalist community so far, and so there very well may be an equal number of men and women within the community. But as far as who makes anti-natalist content, who is visible in anti-natalism, it is overwhelmingly a sausage fest. It's overwhelmingly men. Very, very, very few women are visible in anti-natalism or create anti-natalist content. I think there's all kinds of reasons for that. And listen, I love every single one of my anti-natalist brothers, so it's not a bad thing that men are taking this on to the extent that they are. But I think that the voices of women in antinatalism are sorely missing and desperately needed. And I think your book actually does a great job of driving home that notion. So yeah, I don't know if you have any extra thoughts about that, but I mean, can you talk a little bit more about the decision to make your protagonist a woman? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't have any statistics like that, but here is a statistic. I can't cite where I got it from, but it should be fairly easy to Google. So prior, I think, to what we call the modern era, we'll just say like 1800, I guess, where medical, medical theory and information was much better. I'd heard it said that like 1 in 3 women would die in childbirth throughout history. So let's look at this, the numbers of that. That is 1/3 of 1/2 of the human race that would die doing the very thing that they're biologically engineered to do. Now, the reasons for that are because obviously, in order to walk upright, hominids had to develop comparatively massive gluteal and thigh muscles, as well as narrower pelvises, I think, which is why humans, I think, statistically are very, very bad at reproducing or giving birth compared to other animals. If you look at our um, death by childbirth numbers versus other animals, it's much higher, or was at least prior to modern age. And that always struck me as something very, very horrifying. And again, even from my kind of like male remove, very, very horrifying. First of all, childbirth is like that's a pain that male minds maybe probably can't even imagine. I've heard it's being like one of the worst pains, period. And I never did like that to begin with. That life fundamentally is painful coming in something, and of course, the baby, it's just traumatic as all hell. You're getting ripped out of warm darkness into stark cold daylight. It's traumatic. But so that was something that always struck me, but I just couldn't help but think of how bad the design is that could even be a thing, that many women could die that way. And so I wanted to kind of like, condense all that down into a female character, and who kind of embodies all my ire about things. Because this is what I said. Like, it's not just that the world is a messed up place. Because like when people say, I think a lot of the anti-natalist arguments are like, we have like Hitler and Jeffrey Dahmer and stuff. But the point of my book, because it doesn't even really touch on that, it goes like deeper. It's just like the basic design of ourselves and the world we inhabit is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. I mean, there are videos on here on YouTube you can watch of animals eating each other, or like warthogs getting eaten alive by wild dogs, zebras getting their faces ripped off by crocodiles. And to me, it's horrifying. There's no beauty left to see in nature, I don't think. And that's why at the end of the book, it really goes for it in a way that I think a lot of people might not like. But I had to be honest, that's the way I see it, and so her character is kind of meant to embody a kind of feminine rage at the fact that in a lot of ways they get the short end of the stick biologically, I guess.
No, I feel it. I think it's beautifully expressed. Absolutely. I want to talk at least briefly about some of the other characters individually. The Coxman, in many ways, in my mind, even though he's absolutely the villain in a great sense. Um, and in many ways it's impossible to kind of sympathize with him. He is really one of the book's most tragic characters, I think, because he is somebody that has completely lost his humanity. He is chaos, and I kind of wonder if he, for you, is a piece of kind of that theological discussion that you hint at, being a part of the book, kind of like a mad god kind of idea, madman who, go ahead if you have something to say. Sorry.
Well, yeah, in a way, it was mainly just I didn't want it to be kind of that. It's mainly just meant to highlight like the base animalistic nature of nature. It wouldn't have been as powerful, I don't think, if he had just been like a normal guy who, it wouldn't have been that powerful. But when it reads like some kind of insane bondage porn or something like that, then you kind of get like, it's like, oh, this is much more grotesque. So it was kind of just meant to bring out the animal aspect of it rather than, but yeah, it kind of harkens back to kind of a flawed design, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely see that. And I mean, yeah, the animalistic state is there. I mean, he has no language except for the word cunt. His sexuality is completely controlled. I mean, he's without clothing. He lives in a cage. He has no control. I mean, he takes away the autonomy of all of these women, but he also has absolutely none. And so that's you can't help but kind of feel for him in a sense. I mean, there's a moment in there. I won't exactly say what moment, because again, I don't want to I'm trying not to give too much away throughout this entire conversation. But there seems to almost be a piece of like Lizaveta sort of recognizes that in a weird way they're sort of the same. They're sort of in the same situation because they're both just there for the purpose of other people, basically the creation of other people, and other people like Lord Vax who have to have this sense of immortality, have to have a future, have to have a continuation. They're just as both of them are pawns in different ways, totally different ways, but the same way in some sense.
Yeah, very much so. It's like the Eagle song. We're all just prisoners here of our own device. He's definitely like a victim in his own way, but yeah, very much so. It's kind of like this is I think the real thesis statement of the book is like humanity is on the brink, but the lengths that they have to go to keep it going just kind of invalidate the whole thing to where it's not worth it when you have to go to that level of depravity to keep it going. So that's kind
Absolutely.
of
No, that is absolutely loud and clear. I mean, there is a tragic kind of absurd comedy in this is what's gonna perpetuate the human race. I mean, it's no laughing matter, but it's almost it's sort of you gotta laugh a little because you're gonna cry otherwise. But it kind of situation, for sure. I mean, of characters in the book to feel bad for, he doesn't get much of that or deserve much of that. But it's there nonetheless. I think he's a surprisingly complex character in that sense, just because he is another example of just crude forces and control of precious commodities. That whole idea. I think the real villain in the book is Lord Vax, right? I mean, surprise, surprise, it's the parents that are guilty. He's a rather brilliant expression of this notion that, parents are in this ownership, control kind of situation of those they create. And that their offspring are just an extension of them, a path towards immortality. I guess I don't really have a question about him per se, but I just wondered if there was anything that you'd like to add about the creation of his character, or anything you'd like to say about him.
Yeah, he's really just the as they say in film, the heavy, the bad guy that kind of just antagonizes the heroine. It just kind of embodies the force of life's relentless pursuit of its own continuation. And yeah, not much more than that. Not the most complex character there, but I think he serves the role of villain well enough, I think.
If absolutely, if I may ask, his name, I mean, is that sort of an on the nose like reference to vaccination? Like he thinks he's the cure, to this disease that perpetuates humanity.
Oh no, that was just a happy coincidence because
okay.
I that word it just sounded vaguely cool as a name, so I was like, I'll roll with it. But then only after I was like, Oh wow, that's like that could be like some construed as some kind of subtextual vaccine commentary or anything, but it's not. It's just a cool name I thought of. So
It's definitely a very cool name, for sure, for sure. Erasmus, maybe my favorite character in the book, actually, if you want to know the truth. Again, another incredibly tragic character. I don't want to give, again, trying not to give too much away about who he is and what happens to him. But, especially, he's a very, as you say at the end, sort of the end of the book, he's a very unlikely hero. An unfortunate body, but the heart of a lion. Incredibly intelligent, and it's hard. It's so hard to not want him to be happy. It's hard to not empathize with him. And a sense that I get, and I could be 100% wrong, but this was sort of my reading, is that he seems more unsettled about her assessment of life. And again, I feel for him in the respect, because he's somebody who's had so little out of life, so many disappointments, so many tragedies, from the very beginning, right down to the circumstances of his birth, itself. Like, the one thing he knows is that he's in love. He loves Elizaveta. So sorry. And he seems to be somebody that's kind of trapped in that paradox of like being a human being and wanting and having, and that sort of like being what excuses life's horror, but then also being confronted with this powerful truth that his, the love of his life is espousing, and that he agrees with it, but I think like he's the illusion of desire kind of like keeps pulling him back a little bit. It's kind of like after they again, if I'm giving too much away, I'll cut this out. But after they, make love for the first time, he's sort of like, I don't know what I want, And it's like I really feel for him, because I think it's he sort of encapsulates that feeling of mourning that I think sometimes happens with people who become anti-natalists and extinctionists, where it's like you're a flesh and blood human. You want things, you desire things, you kind of want life to be good because you see some goodness in it, or you experience some pleasure within it, but you also have this conclusion that sort of it spoils the party, right? It's a burden. So I felt that in him, and I don't know if any of that was intentional. I don't know if I'm reading any of that correctly, but that was my reading of him a little bit. So love to know your thoughts.
oh yeah, that's exactly what it was going for. He's kind of like, he sees the validity of her viewpoint, but he's also kind of like, he's kind of like the reluctant convert who still sees enough that it's like, oh, maybe we can make it worth it. But then he's like, no, you're probably right. It's not worth it. But yeah, with him, the I think the thing, the point of both of the characters is that they're the diametric opposite of what they're biologically supposed to be. That is, a female who completely rejects motherhood and childbearing, and the male character who is not physically capable. He is not the alpha male of the pack. He's unfortunately quite debile. But the issue that his character kind of highlights, I think, is that you don't have any control over your own body, over your own constitution. And there's more discussion on that later in the more kind of theological aspects of it, where it's like, if you could design yourself and your own world, would it be worth it? Possibly, maybe then. But with him, he's like, just getting shat on by life one time after another. But he's still, like her, a fighter. So they still kind of see, because he'd have to be. So they kind of see each other, they see themselves in each other. I mean, but yeah, and so that scene where he's like, I don't know if it's worth it now, and then she's like, no, it's not. Even though we can have some fun, it's not worth it. And so it's kind of like their plight is the fact that they aren't what life would have them be, but they're still what life made them. That's the thing, is that you have no control over the rules of the game, but you're thrown into it and expected to run the race, right? But then you also don't even have any control over how adeptly you can conform to this. And in their case, or at least in his case, he can't do it. So it's like, it's a double bind. It's a no-win situation. And so, yeah, his character is kind of meant to illustrate the more gradual evolution to that kind of thought, I think.
Yeah, no, beautifully said, absolutely. Yeah, no, he absolutely tragic character, but I think you really hit a home run with that one, and Lizaveta for sure. They're both a wonderful couple that you just want to see happy. You want a piece of that happiness for them, but yeah. And finally, I just want to say another wonderful character is the witch. There's so much that one would wish to know about her, and so little revealed. I don't know that I really have a question other than that. Can you tell us anything about your decision to add her and the role that she plays in the book?
Yeah, her character is kind of like the voice that kind of cements, because Elizabeth herself is like kind of on the fence at times. She's like, maybe it's just me, maybe I don't have a right to view things this way, but then she's like the affirmative, yeah, you do, because I've been there. And also the for readers out there who have read the original Poe story, that's how it ties into the original Mask of the Red Death story, just as an aside. But yeah, she's kind of like the older, more world-wise version of Elizaveta, who's been there, done that, and understands kind of the rules of the game more. And also, that's kind of a mouthpiece for me to just kind of air some of my more kind of speculative aspects of the story about life and what may lie behind life or such. So yeah, her character is just kind of the like live how you want to live character, and so that's kind of the point of her.
Yeah, she was an excellent character. I was sad when her time in the story was done. But yeah, wonderful story. Wonderful character there. Elizaveta, interestingly, sort of becomes like an activist at the end. Which if I'm revealing too much in any place, just let me know and I cut it out. But that was an element of the story again that I really loved. Do you have any thoughts and feelings about the idea of antinatalist art as a form of antinatalist activism? I mean, do you consider the book a form of antinatalist activism in any way?
Well, I sure hope so. And like it says that after the parabasis section, I've heard it said that art is an affirmation of life. But what I was intending with the book was like a middle finger, basically, to life. So it's kind of an odd work. I don't want to go so far as to say it would be like the first of its kind, but like it may be the first. It may be on the ground floor of that kind of artistic expression of very, very negative. But yeah, so that was, as I mentioned also in that part, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So I was like, I'll do it. I'll write this book to ram home my points about life in a fun and engaging manner, and try to, word it as best I possibly can.
Good. I'm glad that was a big piece of what was behind this, for sure. That's awesome. I've often remarked that for artists, writers, filmmakers, all kinds of different artists, antinatalism is still, even now, this vastly unexplored playground for artistic expression. Like, we're not having the kids, but we are creating. We're having art babies all over the place. And I think that's certainly the case for me. When I discovered this subject, it just like ignited me creatively in just an absolutely tremendous way. And it's just so incredible that it's still so unexplored and that it's so inspiring. I think for a lot of people, when they hear about this subject that aren't antinatalists, it sort of, it sucks all the it sucks all the fun out. But for, I don't know, I suspect for you and for people like me, it's like, it just opens up this incredible world of like stuff you can create out of it. So I don't know. I just was curious as to your thoughts on that. And just what your thoughts are on the importance of antinatalism in art, and if you have any predictions for the future of that. Like, how do you think people will go on to use this subject in various mediums?
Well, I think I do see a a future. Ironically, I see a future for anti-natalism in art. Let's see. There's a film that came out a few years ago. Actually, one of my favorite films called Annihilation. That movie kind of has hints of that, I think, because it's about self-destruction, how death is like woven into like the beginning of life, how life is just programmed to just kind of explode after a time. But then you have works that kind of push back against it, which like the movie Arrival. That may be the most pro-natal movie I have ever seen in my life. That where the choice that the main character in that movie makes at the end is abominable. But yeah, I do see. I think as the worse the world is, I think the more people there will be that will kind of say like, we didn't sign up for this. This is not, what we want, and so there'll be more people, I think, that will make statements against it. So yeah, I think there will be a steady stream of converts from the natalists who produce children, of those children, that will say like, let's do something creative, let's make a statement, kind of. So yeah, I kind of see a future for it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think well, especially as the world continues to deteriorate, I think you might see an increase of people deciding to create more antinatalist works instead of more people. So, thumbs up. Hopefully, that's the future. At the start of each chapter, there's a quote that sort of hints at sort of the theme or the mood of the coming chapter itself. And these quotes, span everything from Moby Dick to Adolf Hitler. Can you? I just was curious if you could talk about your decision to use these quotes. Like, yeah, I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had initially I only had like a handful of quotes that I was going to put on the epigraph page prior to the start, but then I was like, well, I have there's not that many chapters in the book, and I was like, I kind of have a few quotes that kind of can reflect the themes of the chapters. So I was like, maybe I'll just open each chapter with an epigraph. So then I was kind of just like ran through my personal library of music and stuff and pulling out quotes, things that I've read that I can apply to that. Like I had the Smiths quote. I was like, I'm using that somewhere in there. That's getting used. And then the C3PO quote, I was like, I got to throw that in there too. But yeah, so some of them I just had to kind of hunt for or look online stuff. Like the Hitler quote, I was like, that'll work. So yeah, it's just kind of meant to introduce the theme of each chapter, kind of.
Yeah, it added a tremendous amount. I love that you put that in there. The C3PO quote, actually, I'm forgetting exactly what it was, but I remember reading. I was like, oh my god, that is so perfect. What was it? Can you tell me what that was?
Yeah, it's from I just saw it not too long ago when it was on TV. It's from the original Star Wars where they're in the desert and they're after they got hit the planet, and he says, well, it seems we're made to, I can't remember the exact wording, it seems we're made to suffer in life. It means that we're made to suffer. It's our lot in life, that kind of thing. So
absolutely perfect. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I just want to ask you a little bit about the last couple of pages of the book, which is written entirely in italics, and from you. It's a direct communication from you. I just found that section so fascinating that you chose to include that. And so I just was wondering if you talk a little bit about that section. Yeah.
Well, there was some stuff that I needed to say that I couldn't fit into the narrative proper, without just like straining it a little bit more than it needed to be. Still trying to, even though it is kind of written with a message, I was still trying to adhere to kind of some artistic, rails with it. So I didn't want to just cram stuff where it didn't belong. So I still had some stuff to say at the end. So I thought, we can do the parabasis with it. A parabasis is like with a play. It's where like the actors address the audience directly and stuff. And I was like, I can do that and kind of wrap everything up with one last little thrust. And like that was where I was going for it too. And that section took the longest to write out of any part of that book. It took me like 3 months to write that. That was the pulling teeth right there to get that worded rightly. But yeah, so and also there's beyond just like the anti-natalist stuff, and now we're having some like cosmological speculations about stuff, which is that's arguable points. Like I'm not trying to foist that on anybody that they have to believe, but that was kind of my big grand send off of just cramming all the remaining negativity into one thing, and the Goethe quote which opened it. I needed to use that, so I was like, yeah, we'll use that there and then go from there.
It's an extremely effective and powerful part of the book. It's sort of not the I mean, it's a great way to end the piece. So I'm glad you made the decision to add it for sure. One thing that I noticed in other interviews that you've done about the book, aside from the one you did with Lawrence, obviously, is that you don't tend to come clean sometimes about the anti-natalism in the book. Like I can't remember who it was with, but he interviewed you and he asked you about like some of the ideas behind it, and you didn't explicitly say it, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but I just thought it was interesting. So I was wondering if you'd speak on that a little bit.
Oh yeah, well it's just play into the audience, right? I mean, for people that haven't fully reached that point, it can be kind of shocking, and I don't want to sound because like there's kind of that element of antinatalism that can be kind of like judgmental and like angry you see that on Reddit quite a bit, and that was never my intent to do that. My intent was just to try to foster some kind of empathy for because so many people, and that's the hilarious thing is that the human animal, the human brain is the single most complex and powerful thing in the known universe. It can literally move mountains. It can reshape the world how it wants. It is the most powerful and complicated thing ever, and yet you can create that from a one night stand, right? It's just the cosmic irony of that. And so I think a lot of people, like if you are just dead set on having kids, I would still advise you not to because I don't think it's fair. But like if you have a stable job, live in a good community, that you can create a person that will have some quality of life. But then there's just so many people that just don't think about that at all. And so the point of the book wasn't to like say like if you have kids you're bad or anything like that, because that's not me. It's just trying to say look before you leap, think about this and analyze your own situation, because I think if anybody analyzes their own life, no matter how good of a life you think that you have, the alternative and not having been is just that you're free from everything. There's no good or bad because there's no you to make these value judgments. So it's like it's just a null state, and I think that that's the superior state. And I would encourage anyone out there on the fence about having kids to say maybe it's not fair. That's the one inarguable point that you can't refute, is that it is not fair because you don't get a choice to come into this world, and there's only one exit. So are you really comfortable consigning someone to that? So yeah, the point of the book was playing to the audience in the other interviews. I wasn't just going to come right out and say like people who have kids are did wrong, because I don't mean that with the book. I'm just saying that people need to think more about it. And that's one thing that I'm thankful to my parents for, even though I still would choose not to have been born if I could. They were very conscientious. I don't think my mom had me till she was like 32 or something. You're pushing the limit there of where you want to, how far you want to go. But they waited till they had stable careers and a steady income and a house that was paid for and everything. So that's, if you're gonna have kids, I would recommend, like, if you just can't be, if your fulfillment in life just depends on having kids, then at least do right by them insofar as you can by being able to provide for them, because it's not anybody else's job to do that. As harsh as that sounds, like people, we make children, and then in so many cases they just kind of end up wards of the state or out there in society floating around. and that's because their parents didn't do right by them. So the point of the book isn't to just like, shake the ruler, but kind of just to inspire thought. So if I didn't go fully into the antinatalist position in certain other interviews, it's just because I didn't want to come off like a demagogue, I guess.
No, that's the very candid answer, and I appreciate everything you just said. Listen, from experience, it's very difficult having that conversation with people, and I understand like it's a game of chess, it's a game of Tetris, and it's really, really, really exceptionally hard to come off the right way. And even though I am somebody that believes that it's never okay to produce a life, and I don't think anybody should do it, even if they can provide a good quality of life for that person, that's still an important meme in the world to communicate that, like, if you're gonna do it, at least have some ducks in a row, have more than $10 in the bank, have a, that's still important for people to hear, because people are gonna do it. Unfortunately, we don't live in an extinctionist world. So I definitely understand how difficult it is to communicate these things outside of sort of the comfort zone of creating a piece of literature, when you're just talking to people in other circumstances, but also just the different types of messaging that are needed. And I mean, absolutely. By the end of the book, again, I might be revealing too much, you'll have to stop me, Lizaveta rather brilliantly has devised a road for the extinction of humanity, sort of single-handedly. She's connected the dots and figured out a way, and she plans to spread her gospel far and wide. The death knell of the human race has sounded, except that before the death of the Coxman, he did, conceivably at least, produce a number of children who could, conceivably, not only survive the plague, but continue the human race as well. And I just wonder what ethical dilemmas might befall our Lizaveta in relation to the existence of those children, and if that could possibly be the basis of some sort of sequel.
Yeah, well, first of all, the thing that she says in the last part of the epilogue, if you've read Zopp's The Last Messiah, that's a direct rip from that. I don't know if that's copyright infringement, but I was rolling with it in it either way. Yeah, so I thought I was working that little direct quote in. But yeah, so yeah, there's presumably about a half dozen children that are probably been made prior to this that could, like you say, conceivably carry on things. But yeah, there's definitely, I couldn't resolve that to where it was like a full scale, everything ends by the end. So there's still that window there. But yeah, there's possibly a sequel, and I had started on a sequel. I wrote a paragraph that was kind of meant to be pick up sometime later. Not so much a sequel as kind of like a spiritual successor, you might say, that picks up. But I kind of lost steam on that. So will there ever be a sequel? I don't know, but I think it wraps up in satisfactorily for the purposes of the story, at least.
Whether it ends up being a series or a singular work, I mean, I'm just very grateful that we have what we have. So, yeah, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely hit the ball right out of the park with the one. So I'm perfectly satisfied for sure. Out of curiosity, do you plan on making more videos about the book at all? It'd be kind of interesting to see like an audio version of it eventually. I don't know if you've thought about that at all.
Yeah, I plan on, let's say I released it last year in July, and I had planned on doing like a 1-year anniversary kind of for it in this year. So yeah, I hope that might be I hope that might draw some new readers to it if they haven't become aware of it already. So that, and yeah, I mean, I definitely do one more video about it. It's just kind of like a 1-year on thing, although I don't want to you don't want to sell your own thing too hard. So I don't want to like, just like cram it down people's throats like that. But yeah, one more video at least, I think.
Excellent, excellent. I'll look forward to that. Well, Carroll, I love the book. I truly did. Thank you for writing it. I don't think it's for everyone, in the sense that I think some may have some trouble stomaching some of the sexual violence. None of which, by the way, I found unnecessary in the context of the work itself, and that's something that I really just wanted to make a point of saying. I completely understand that kind of subject matter is really, really difficult for a lot of people, and I definitely get that it might be too much, but it really does do a lot to drive home the point that you're trying to make, the sheer brutality and the violence that is so much a huge part of the antinatalist extinctionist assessment that you come to in the book. And so I don't think it's gratuitous without good reason. And I just wanted to say that for sure. I really do also want to say that my appreciation of your book really does come from a great love of the small but growing presence of antinatalist novels. I know, Lawrence, and you talked a little bit about this, but I did want to show off just a little bit of my collection of the other ones that do exist. And I thought perhaps, our audience might be interested in seeing some of these, but also maybe for future reviews, we'll see. So there's a couple of ones that are not in English. This is Miguel Steiner's El Antinatalista. That's it's sort of a detective story. It's really great. There is an English translation that I'm hoping will be like released, officially at some point. But that's one. There is this one in Japanese. Unfortunately, I forget the name of the author and the title, but it's very cool. It's like very anime-esque. And it was a big hit in Japan, incidentally. So there's that one. I hope that will get an English release at some point. The one that I really, really hope gets an English translation, I would love to interview this author. He's an author by the name of Kim Yong-ha. I'm probably saying his name wrong. It's a Korean author. This is a book by the name of Farewell. Really fascinating. But then there's also a couple in English, and again, I think you'd really find a lot of these fascinating. This one's called Last Call for Heroes by Connor Garcia. Connor has been a guest on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast before. It's short but sweet and brilliant. I think you'd really enjoy this one. It's available. I'll put links to all of these below. This is a brilliant novel called Breast and Egg by Miyoko Kawakami. I think there's also a Japanese edition of this too. I don't know that it's consciously anti-natalist, but the themes are there. And again, it's like your work, it's from a woman's perspective, and it's just excellent. I think you'd really love this book, honestly. And then the last one, again, it's a duo. Calder Shevchuk is actually two different female authors. This is the only, besides this one, this is the only one in English that has like an official publisher, but this is the Offset, and it takes place sort of in an antinatalist world. Does also have a female sort of antinatalist anti-hero of sorts, but of a very different kind than yours. But the point that I want to make, this is an excellent book. I highly recommend it. But I really do think, within this collection, The Unbearable Heaviness of Being really does make an incredible addition to this collection. And if I may say, I think does make the strongest sort of argument against life out of all of them. So, well done.
And, thank you. And now I'm definitely going to have to look into those, especially the Last Call for Heroes thing, just because that title is really, really awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to look into those. So thank you for giving me some more books to potentially review.
Absolutely. And so, Carroll, what are you working on now? What are your future plans, and how can people best support your work?
My future plans, I kind of have started one or two little things here and there just to kind of keep writing, not of the same like subject matter as the book, but yeah, the well has got a been dipping dry a little bit since I published it. I kind of a little bit of a writer's block. That kind of seems to happen after I write something. It's like there's just like a void there. But yeah, to support me, you buy the book. I guess it's only $2.99 on Kindle. I just set it at the cheapest possible level because I was like, I'm not looking to get rich off this. So it's only $2.99 on Kindle. 7 something in paperback, and yeah, sub to the channel if you like, books, Booktube, book reviews, if you're an avid reader, fan of literature, and yeah, keep reading.
Yeah, excellent. I really do want to thank you for your channel. It's been hurting my wallet just a little bit because I've been ordering books that you've been reviewing. I'm actually about to read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian and Robert Cormier's After the First Death. I can't wait to read that one. So thank you. I really had never heard of that. I'd heard of Blood Meridian. I knew who Cormac McCarthy was, but I'd never heard of the first After the First Death. So I can't wait.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to hear that I was able to turn somebody on to some books. That's the goal of the channel there, is to get people into some good literature. So I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll let you know what I think of it for sure. Well, Carroll, what can I say? Please keep reviewing. Please keep writing. You've definitely got me hooked. I'm a huge fan. I think your channel deserves way more subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed to Carroll's channel yet, definitely go and do that right now. Definitely go and buy yourself a copy of The Unbearable Heaviness of Being or Life Reviled. Sorry, I just couldn't remember the subtitle to look. But yeah, it's very reasonably priced. I'm glad to hear it's been selling well. And it's worth every penny. So once again, thank you so much for everything that you do, Carroll, and thank you so much for being my guest today on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, it's been very fun.
Hey everybody, it's Amanda. Are you looking for an excellent way of making academic antinatalist works more available across the globe? I know I am. And so I'm delighted to announce that the wonderful and award-winning Polish publishing house
Towarzystwo Naukowe imienia Stanisława Andreskiego,
which over the last few years has produced some exceptionally beautiful Polish editions of both original works like
Anti-natalism
by
Mikołaj Starzyński,
as well as classic academic antinatalist works like David Benatar's Better Never to Have Been, has now opened an online shop featuring the magnificent antinatalist Ouroboros designed by
Michał Dziadkowiec.
The logo is fully customizable and available on a wide variety of products. Proceeds from all sales at the shop go directly towards the translation, production, and publication of more Polish editions by
Towarzystwo Naukowe imienia Stanisława Andreskiego.
What a perfect way for the antinatalist community to help assist an amazing company doing such important work, making more antinatalist academic works more widely available. Link below.
Towarzystwo Naukowe imienia Stanisława Andreskiego.
Hi, my name is Nimrod, and about 10 months ago, I decided that I want to try and initiate grassroots anti-natalism activism in Israel, because this is where I was forced to be born. The activism is going better than I expected, so I thought that if it's working in a place like Israel, it sure can and should work around Europe. And besides, why should only people in Israel hear my nagging about reproduction?
כשאנחנו מולידים מישהו, שאנחנו עושים ילד, מה שאנשים קוראים, אין לנו שום דרך לשלוט בזה שהחיים שלו יהיו טובים, ושהוא ימצא את החיים שלו ראויים. כשהוא יהיה גדול, או דברים יכולים לקרות בכל רגע נתון. ההחלטה הכי קריטית בחיים של מישהו, לא הוא קיבל. No, but it's not about balance, it's about suffering. Why should anyone suffer? את יכולה לחוות הורות בלי ליצור בן אדם חדש, לאמץ. שזה פתרון מדהים בעיניי, מאוד יפה מוסרית. I'm not playing God. People who procreate play God, they create new life. I don't create new life. I'm standing here with signs. People are creating new life, and they are creating a new victimizer, someone who would cause suffering to others. 10 אנשים נולדים, 9 יהיו מאושרים, 1 יהיה אומלל, אבל כל 10 לא יסבלו מזה שהם לא יהיו קיימים. כי הם לא קיימים, יפה. אז בשביל האחד הזה שיהיה אומלל, לא שווה שה9 יהיו קיימים.
Therefore, from the 15th of April and until the end of May, I will be going around Europe to talk to people about reproduction, spreading the word about antinatalism. Madrid, Barcelona, Paris, Brussels, Vienna, Prague, Berlin, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Budapest, Rome. And all in all, I will be visiting more than 30 cities in 45 days, starting from the 15th of April until the end of May. The goal of this journey is to try and initiate some anti-natalism grassroots activism in Europe. So I really hope that as many anti-natalists as possible would join me to these outreach events. If you are passionate about anti-natalism and I'm coming to your city, please join me. Together, we'll spread the word and normalize anti-natalism.
Hey there everybody, it's Amanda, how's it going? This is just a quick little video to let everybody know that the physical edition of my new book with Matti Haire, Anti-natalism, Extinction, and the End of Procreative Self-Corruption through the Cambridge University Press Element series is out now. Reminding everybody there is absolutely no need to purchase anything. You can actually read the book for free on the Cambridge University Press website. Links will be below. It's open source, it's free, so if you just want to go check it out, definitely you're more than welcome to do that. But if you would like an actual physical edition of the book, that can now be a reality as well for you. It's being sold on the Cambridge University Press website, also Amazon.com, really anywhere books are sold from what I can tell. If you happen to read it either online or in the print edition, we'd absolutely love to know what you think about it. We'd love to see some reviews on places where it's sold, video reviews. If you're interested in doing a review of some kind, and you want to tell me about it, definitely let me know. You can write to me at exploringantinatalism@gmail.com. Thank you so much once again to everybody that's been so supportive of this project. Huge thank you, of course, to my wonderful co-author, Matti Haire. I can't believe I'm actually holding physical editions of the book in my hand right now. This has been, just a feeling hitherto unknown is coursing through my entire system right now. So, just an incredible moment in time for me, I must say. So, just wanted to let everybody know that, yes, the book is now available. You can go, links below to where you can read it for free, like I said. But again, if you'd like to get yourself a copy of one of these lovely physical editions, the links below to where you can do that will also be there as well. All right, I can barely speak. I'm so excited. All right, hope you enjoyed the episode. Much more on the way. We got all kinds of exciting things in promotion of the book on the way, so look forward to that. And all the best, and bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Antinatalism Podcast. Please follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Exploring Antinatalism can also be heard on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Amazon.com, and so many other platforms. You can email me at exploringantinatalism@gmail.com. Website designed by Visions Noirs. Please follow him at www.bionoir.com and follow him on Instagram. Logo art by Life Sucks. Please subscribe to him on YouTube and check out his shop on Etsy at www.etsy.com/shop/LifeSucksPublishing. Music by Matti Haire. You can hear the whole song, Life is a Sexually Transmitted Disease with a Mortality Rate of 100%, by following the link in the description, and make sure to also read his academic paper which inspired the song. If you must give them a gift, then give them the gift of non-existence, in the Cambridge Quarterly of Healthcare Ethics on cambridge.org. Links below. All the best, and bye for now.
Life is no thrill compared to nil. Life is no thrill. It's worse than nil. So draw the right conclusion. Let them be still.